So ladies, gentlemen, fellow 11th Street kids, welcome to my Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 6 recap, review, and breakdown. So today's episode, my god, guys, we finally get the revelations people have been speculating about for weeks now with what kind of Earth this is, and boy, my boy, is it one of the worst versions of an alternate history you could possibly visit. We also finally get the expected Lex Luthor cameo, which might not be the last time we see him. If you are brand new here and you like Peacemaker, you like DC, you're absolutely in the right place. Consider subscribing, and if you go on to enjoy the episode coverage here, I would personally really appreciate a like rating. Let's talk about the very beginning of the episode. We get some kids asking to take a photo, and Emilia takes it right before the intro rolls, and all of their faces start to droop. Probably is just the kind of thing where it's meant to just hint at how things may not be as they seem, and things in this world are ultimately a distorted version of reality compared to the one that Chris thinks it is. Now, I have seen some people suggest, what if it is something bigger? So on the one hand, I see how people are wondering if this weird mirror stuff could lead to the whole Man of Tomorrow tie-in, such as, you know, what if these are subtle teasers for something that will be explained more in the final episode? But for now, I think I will just probably play it safe and say that these are more likely just meta hints as to how all isn't how it appears to be to Chris on this Earth. But let me know if you think there is more to it. But back to the 11th Street kids. This scene is kind of something I've been waiting for ever since we saw it in the trailers for Season 2. And that is, of course, just seeing Vigilante's mum's house as a place to operate out of, and just getting to see how he comes from what is seemingly a perfectly ordinary home life. Adrian's mum then basically outs him because he's been pretending to her that Harcourt was his girlfriend and that he broke up with her because she was too slutty. You know, I feel like Economos' face was brilliant in this moment and probably reflected everyone. And that part about the new era with what some people's phones, this was just getting so out of control. But it is the kind of simple humor which I feel does work. Like, don't get me wrong, not all the humor in Peacemaker works every single time, but I would say stuff like this I did find pretty entertaining. Now, in this moment, we finally get to see Adrian suit up as Vigilante this season, which feels really good to see because it is kind of mental how this season we've barely had or barely seen anyone in suits this entire time. And of course, it's not all about that. And if anything, like, talking like this reminds me of back in the day reviewing Arrow, or just an Arrowverse show, where people would go crazy if we didn't see Team Arrow in their suits for one episode. I wish we did get a bit more of it this season, but it's not like to explore a show and characters, you need to see that every step along the way. I think just in addition to what feels like episodes being much shorter than Season 1, it feels like, you know, before you know it, with all these 30-minute episodes, it's going to kind of be over, and then, like, we could have maybe only have some suit action in the last couple of episodes. But to be fair, don't forget, we do still have episodes 7 and 8, and, you know, things could get even crazier there. And that's probably where Gunn has pulled in all of his Peacemaker, Vigilante kind of superhero action level stuff. Now, moving on, don't get me started about Adrian's Beanie Baby collection, but Adebayo sets up the alien kettle in the doorway to the Beanie Babies, and here she manages to pretty swiftly start the dimensional portal, which I do feel like in the nitpick part of my brain, it's like, okay, I get how she saw Chris kind of fiddle with it, and even then, like, Chris kind of had to wing it because he hasn't done it in so many years, and in the first place, he didn't really know how to do it when he was a kid. So it did feel a bit convenient with how smooth operating this alien technology was. It was absolutely brilliant how the QUC sent out that shockwave in the basement, which just blasts a bunch of coke in all of their faces, probably to the point of where they're inhaling more than enough to get some kind of high here. And so this is where they enter the QUC right in time for where the alien comes out of his little QUC doorway to burn his little alien rodent. And oh man, like, from this moment on, I was just really waiting for shit to hit the fan. Now, shortly afterwards, Harcourt spots the photo of the other Emilia and Peacemaker, and right as she was kind of beginning to rant about it, we have Keith overhear her and find her. Now, this scene about the snow globe was so awkward, and Harcourt agrees to go along with Keith to Argus, and meanwhile, we have the others kind of freaking out about just being in this other dimension. You have Chris's dead brother Keith alive, and that's making Economos almost want to throw up. Now, again, I will say another bit of criticism here. Just if I was maybe handling this scene being shot, it may be a bit of a nitpick to some of you, but when they're arguing about what to do, I kind of felt like they were being way too loud in the house. Like, surely they should kind of be worried about basically anyone being in the house, like Augie, for example, because after all, they don't know. They just came through the door, went through the trophy room. They already spoke too loud to the point of where Keith came in and took Harcourt with him. Who knows if Augie's in the house? Meanwhile, though, we have Rick Flag Sr. Get informed by Flurry that the 11th Street kids are all MIA. There's no update on Judo Master, and he's getting pissed. So we know that, don't get me wrong, he absolutely wants to apprehend Peacemaker and kind of have some justice there. But we know that his bigger plan is truly, actually, to get the QUC technology. So he announces to, I think, his assistant that he wants to jet prepped to leave for Belle Reef Prison to meet a prisoner. And jumping to that point a little later on, we cut to that moment where we get Lex Luthor himself, Nicholas Hoult, in Peacemaker Season 2, meeting Rick Flag Sr. And he's using a cane, I guess due to his run-in with Crypto. I mean, he's still recovering from that. I don't blame him after how painful that looked. And I have to say, like, obviously right out the gate here, my reaction is this is crazy awesome to see, just for many reasons. I mean, I know we're just in the very early days of the DCU, and all we've literally had is Creature Commandos and Superman, but after seeing Lex in Superman and now having this connective tissue established in live action in Peacemaker, I mean, I know we've already seen the Justice Gang, but, you know, this is Luthor, and then knowing that he's going to be in Man of Tomorrow, that's the kind of threads I love to see. Now, initially here, Lex takes the opportunity to open up by saying that the last time he saw him, he was denying that metahumans were a threat, and now it seems that they're taking over the world. And once again, you've probably heard me talk about in previous episode breakdowns that the metahuman commentary does seem to be a thing that Gunn is trying to focus on, even if in the background, he's weaving it in and out, like the news reports of experts saying there's this existential threat that needs a response. There's metahuman breakouts of Arkham Asylum and whatnot. So when Lex is pointing it out here, he's probably hearing about that as well, but he also obviously mentions how the Justice Gang and Superman were determining international politics, which is absolutely a reference to Hawkgirl killing Gurkos in Superman, which, you know, from my thoughts on this, some of you may remember, again, you know, he's a bad guy, but it is still wild to me that a member of something like the Justice Gang is assassinating a world leader, or, you know, or that's on the table. Assassinating world leaders is on the table. So I'm glad that Hawkgirl's moment there, yes, I know she's not Superman, and that was the point of that scene in a way, but, you know, it should still have ripple effects into the larger tensions surrounding metahumans in the DCU, because that absolutely can't stand, because the question of if metahumans in positions of authority like Hawkgirl can do that, well, where do the possibilities end with what other decisions they could make at any given moment? Or if one wants to break bad and decide, hey, I'm going to kill this world leader now. It's, you know, a fine line, and I think it probably makes Lex Luthor feel very validated, even if Gurkos was a rotten egg. It still is in his favor for his viewpoint on how metahumans are calling the shots, and should that really be the case? And as he put it himself as well, where meanwhile he's here in Belle Reeve listening to a bear-sized man with dragon skin, let's just say having some fun with a glowing twink with cartoon eyes in the cell beside him every single night. I'm like, damn, you know, I'm sure this is probably just a reference to any random metahumans, but the first character that popped into my head was like Dragon King. I guess you could say is Killer Croc. Glowing eyes, I've already seen some people say, well, that's probably Phosphorus, but I don't know about that one. But either way, Luthor goes on to say that he did everything he could to eradicate the metahuman blight, and now he's enshrouded in it for the next 265 years. But Flag offers, at the very least, to maybe get him transferred to another prison without metahumans. Now, Lex can already tell that there'll be a better offer because he needs his help at the end of the day. And I really enjoyed Holt's acting, like his whole demeanor as Lex Luthor here, because even when he's in prison, he's acting like he's in full control, and he exudes that confidence. And I guess, I suppose in this situation, he kind of is in full control because Flag needs his help. So other details that I really liked here is just Luthor's views on costumed vigilantes compared to metahumans. So, this kind of almost gives you a clue of what he would think of Batman and Robin or Green Arrow and whatnot, because Flag asks if he's heard of Peacemaker, and Luthor hasn't because he views those who are costumed vigilantes as nothing but goofy, and they're not a threat as they're not metahumans. I'd kind of love to see Nicholas Holt's Luthor in the room with Batman now and have him say that same thing. But either way, Flag goes on to explain that he's in possession of some kind of dimensional portal, and he needs to find it for, like, A, obviously to not let another rift tear apart another city, but B, how it could be beneficial for all of them. That keeps coming up, by the way. I'm sure on the baseline it's like, okay, well, Argus could use this and it's beneficial technology to the people of Earth, or at least the government. But, it could tie into the Man of Tomorrow stuff as well. Now, Luthor says that he has a scanner that would be able to pinpoint the location of the portal, but he wants his freedom. So what is the US government going to give to him for stopping this clown? And all Flag could say is an opportunity for redemption. And he's like, I'm listening. So it's kind of like, ooh. I have to admit, I didn't overall here think that we'd see him this soon. I thought perhaps maybe episode 7, but I like how this does cook things along even more for the pursuit of, the QUC for Rick Flag Sr., and naturally, when we see Lex again, perhaps this season, we'll learn how this beginning act of redemption can lead into, I guess, maybe what we could call a larger act of redemption with Man of Tomorrow. Now, I know a lot of us have already said, as if Lex can really be redeemed here after what he did in Superman, but in addition to helping out Argus locate the portal and then probably striking an even better deal when they need to put him in a war suit to deal with somebody like bloody Brainiac with Superman, whether they like it or not, he might be able to negotiate his freedom back then, or some kind of immunity. But will it actually be redemption? No. Like, I think it may come across that way, and I think with what Gunn said recently in various comments, that, how he likes getting into the character of Luthor and how there is really a bizarre heroic aspect to him if you leave morality aside, which is kind of important, but I think that's going to be presented, but really, hopefully Man of Tomorrow just doubles down on his villainy at a certain point in the film, maybe towards the end, like really being like, okay, now this has just opened up an even bigger can of worms, and now guess what? He's free to do so because he might have immunity or something like that. Now, this isn't a discussion series video, so I'd love to know your thoughts on this, but I think we will see Luthor again, just given that we've heard this season ties into Man of Tomorrow, and sure, that could be accessed from Rick Flag Sr. as the head of Argus, but I think there's a possibility we could have David Corenswit's Superman being taken to see Luthor in conjunction with Flag to request his help, even if it's super reluctantly. Now, this is where Bordeaux learns from Flag that he got what he needs, and as a result, Luthor is being transferred to Van Col, and they're now technically partners with Lex Luthor. And I believe Van Col was a prison in or around Metropolis when it comes to the Arrowverse's version. Now, after looking it up, though, it turns out that it does go back to the Power Company one-shot from 2002, and you might be able to see where I'm going here. If they make this version of the prison truly like either in or just right next to Metropolis, then maybe this is going to be a bit more. I mean, it's not like Superman couldn't fly there anyway, wherever Luthor is. But, it's closer to Superman, kind of. So, we could see Corin Sweat. I mean, let me know in the comments down below if you think we're going to see Corin Sweat. But back with Peacemaker, he tells Amelia that he's going to go meet Keith at Argus, and, he gets on the Peace Cycle to go there. And as Harcourt enters Argus, we have that dog detect the coke that was sprayed all over her. Now, Peacemaker arrives and speaks to Harcourt, and it really is kind of like, damn, this gets pretty heavy. So obviously we see Peacemaker ask initially what the hell is going on with Harcourt being here, and she reveals that she didn't double-cross him, but rather saved him, and how he should have known that she would never, ever have done something like that to him, and how that hurt her feelings. Like, we all know the conversation in this scene, and I have to say, hats off to Jennifer Holland here. I think she has done an incredible job, an absolutely incredible job, because for me, like, when you really see a performance like that, where she starts to break. I mean, obviously it's a part of her character, this tough exterior, and, showing any kind of vulnerability in a character who's been set up quite well with that, and then really, really sell it with a performance to match. It immediately kind of makes me tear-jerky. And she was just, what more can I say than she was just really, really fantastic. And it felt like it wasn't like pure payoff, because it's not like they're all happy-go-lucky skipping through the sunset. But we finally got to a place that's more accessible between Peacemaker and Harcourt, because she's now here to get him, and he's now getting a bit more of a semblance of an answer with regards to what he's been seeking this whole season from her, with like, okay, so like, was there anything to what happened on the boat? He admits that he loves her, and obviously she kind of already knows that, and it's like the more this forces her to feel her feelings about it. Again, Jennifer Holland, that line where she calls herself a freaking nightmare. Meanwhile, we have Vigilante arrive at his other house, and this is where things step up a notch with, I guess, the clues to this other Earth. And he is super giddy about all the differences, whether it's the little freaking squirrels, the chipmunks, his dad not being gay here, which is when he makes his way to the secret room downstairs. And in this universe, we have the other Vigilante dressed as Vigilante. And I'm not going to lie, by the way, I thought maybe he'd be dressed as something else. And it gets tense for a second, but really, he's just as hyped as our Adrian is, and they start hanging out. There's Spider-Man memeing. I was like, oh god, of course. Now, they're having the best time on the couch when we connect the later scenes together to this moment, even talking about the best Pokemon. And then we have Vigilante ask if the other dimension's Vigilante's best friend is Peacemaker, and he's like, no, I hate him. Like, he, and in fact, he's dedicated his entire life to tearing down everything he stands for. And it's like, okay, so what does he stand for? But he goes on to say that Christopher Smith is his arch enemy, and that's when he reveals he's the reason he joined the Sons of Liberty in the first place. And again, shout out to those of you who are calling this like as soon as they were introduced, because in the comics, there's been a couple of different versions, but the Sons of Liberty were kind of how they were presented, at least how they first seemed in that episode of Peacemaker. But really, obviously, Gunn here has flipped it on its head. And this is where it's like, okay, they're really diving into what everyone has been thinking all along, with how the Sons of Liberty, with that chloranolololo, or whatever it was called, was really what you would call the resistance in this reality. And Vigilante is a part of that group. So will this also make this Vigilante fight our Vigilante? I don't know. Or will he just help clarify things to our Vigilante and they'll work together? And this is now bringing us to the end of the episode, guys, because, well, this brings us to that scene where Adebayo wants to take a walk around the block. And she does just that, and she's being stared at by this woman driving her car. Meanwhile, we have Augie returning home, and Economos shits his pants, which then leads to Augie tackling Economos to the floor, stabbing him through the hand, which is where, thanks to Economos, he bloody reveals everything to him, saying he's from another dimension, but not only that, he's here to get their Peacemaker back, who's not really his son, because guess what? He killed your son. It's like, goddamn, Economos, I thought Judo Master would be the one exposing Chris. But no, it was Economos. Speaking of, where was Judo Master this episode? I know he's in the trailer for next week's episode, and I think he's going to be forced to kind of team up with the 11th Street Kids just in order to get out. Now, the episode's cutting all over the place at this point. Like, Emilia returns to Argus, and everyone's like, okay, wait, what? Like, you know, what's going on here? Since, after all, she's still there. Well, you know, Harcourt's still there with Peacemaker. And she reveals to Peacemaker that she hasn't seen a single person of color ever since she's been in this dimension. And this is where we have Keith returning back home, and he slams the brakes on the car after seeing Adebayo. And he says,
"What got out?"
and it's like, my gold, Keith. And he starts slamming on the horn to, like, alert everyone in the neighborhood. And she starts running for her life, which is when we have Peacemaker looking at the flag for his perfect world's perfect country. And, Jesus, it's most certainly, like, if this isn't a take on Earth X, then I don't know what is. Now, this has absolutely got to be a motivator for Chris to return home. Like, despite having his dad and brother here, like, loving him, you know, my God, can you really justify living in an alternate reality like this? And not only that, like, it's so obvious where things are going to go. It's kind of what we've been saying. It's going to get messed up. Like, I know it's kind of easier to digest because this is like Earth X, but it's still going to be hard for Peacemaker who is already on, like, the DCU's Earth, killed his father, killed his brother when he was a kid, and now he's going to have to go through with killing his father, who loves him, and also killing an adult version of his dead brother. Like, that's, you know, I know I've said that before, but that is still going to be, I think John Cena's acting is really going to be pretty insane when it comes to that scene, because it's just going to, you know, the emotional, psychological effect of having to do that when the whole season hinges or was springboarded off of Chris not having his brother, his dad. But either way, Emilia Harcourt in this moment commands the guards at Argus to arrest Harcourt, and we cut to Adebayo fleeing for her life. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I think we need to get a live-action GI robot in here freaking ASAP. Like, right now, Gunn. So, yes, I will say that this was a pretty crazy episode, and the other crazy episode, like Gunn said, you know, you've got episodes 6, 7, and 8, but mainly 6 and 8 are the crazy ones. Not to say that next week's episode won't still get crazy. They're going to be rushing out of their Earth. But now are we going to have like that's another thing. Are we going to have like a dimensional, not like war or battle, but are they going to, you know, because they're going to learn. I mean, they have learned, thanks to Economos, that their Peacemaker died. He was murdered in their eyes. So they might be willing to go through the QC themselves to try and hunt down Peacemaker, which is pretty insane. But then we also have scenes from the trailer where we have Argus, like, looking in various doorways, right? And you see those little frickin', well, they're not little, they're gigantic spider skull things. And it's like, where do we get with that? And is it through, you know, I'm now wondering, are those scenes in the trailer that we saw possibly like at the very end of the season where Rick Flag Sr. was successful in apprehending the QUC technology, the alien kettle, as I put it? And, you know, maybe Peacemaker at that point is happy to hand it over. It also kind of gives him a chance and the 11th Street Kids for Argus to turn a blind eye to the things that have happened this season. But those scenes could be when Argus is taking a look at stuff, and that could be the tie-in to Man of Tomorrow. Because, again, I keep saying, whether I may be wrong, but the Man of Tomorrow threat could be set up in this season from Argus doing a bit of poking around in the QUC, and they kind of bring in a threat or alert a threat to this Earth that then comes in the future or something. I'm not sure, but it feels like that will be coming down the line or something like that. I would love to know your theories. But overall, you know, very much so enjoyed this episode. I'm really glad. I mean, I'm hoping that these final 3 episodes, because this one was, but episode 7 and 8 really drives that momentum up. Now, the teaser for episode 7 shows us a couple of things I briefly want to skim through here. So we see Augie basically informing Keith that, yeah, he may have just learned something from Economos. And as for Bordeaux and and Flag. We hear Bordeaux saying, is that the guy? And Flag says, Luthor says that's the guy. So I think his scanner was really a recommendation for somebody who could track down the QUC, or somebody, should I say, who is very knowledgeable when it comes to dimensional energy. And they try and keep the person ambiguous in the teaser, but this is absolutely Sidney Happerson from Superman. Do you remember the guy in the glasses, the guy who was also in Luthor's control room? And I can actually see him carrying on for quite a bit if the QUC is going to be critical to what Argus want to use it for in the future, and if the QUC could even be fairly important to Man of Tomorrow. But I've been rambling more than enough here, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies this review was out a bit late. Obviously, a lot of us who have the review screeners for this didn't get access to episode 6, so it's probably going to be like this for episode 7 and 8 as well. So bear with me over the next couple of weeks. But can't wait to see what you thought of this episode. Do not forget to leave your thoughts on it down in the comments below. If you're still here, would really appreciate a like. Consider subscribing for more videos just like this. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see all of you 11th Street kids in the next video. Goodbye.